Hi Noshers, my name is Micah, the host of Not Your Bubby's Nosh, a conversation about your favorite and least favorite Jewish foods, your go-to source for holiday meal inspiration, and a place to discuss and kvetch about which bubby made it best. Hello, Noshers, and welcome to yet another episode of Not Your Bubby's Nosh. Today, we have someone a little different. This is our first restaurateur on Not Your Bubby's Nosh. Oftentimes, I'm having cookbook writers, food writers, and you know why? Because that's who I know. But I'm so excited to finally chat with someone who owns a restaurant. I am chatting with Joan Ellis, the co-founder of Babette, a Berkeley-based restaurant. Together with her husband, Patrick, they are previous owners of Penny, a Dolce bakery and aubergine catering, and their combined passions have been serving the Bay Area for over 30 years. Joan and Patrick have participated in the organic and sustainably sourced food movement since the early 90s, and especially living in the Bay Area, it makes it possible for them to provide customers with the finest ingredients. Joan and I are going to talk all about owning a restaurant, how she got into it, and the two Jewish foods on her menu that mean the most to her. So welcome, Joan. I am so excited to have you. Joan, I'd love to start with a little bit about you, about your food background. Was this something you were always drawn to? How did you get from point A to where you are now?
Well, I think that at the time it didn't seem like a natural course, but I started out as being a singer when I was young. And that was my dream, was to become a professional singer. And I did lots of variations of it over the years and still do sing today. But I waited tables and worked in restaurants, as most artists do when they're trying to make a living. And I never saw myself in the kitchen. I think when I was a teenager, I was definitely attracted to doing some cooking and baking, but I come from a pretty large family. My mom she wasn't a big cook. She cooked every day. I shouldn't say she wasn't a big cook because she was a typical housewife. She didn't work and she did cook every single day, but I don't think it was a love of hers. And every time I wanted to get in the kitchen and try something or do something, it was just in her mind, it was just a mess that she was going to have to clean up and too much trouble. So we weren't a household where there was baking going on or much involvement. Until I was in middle school, my father, who was the typical, go to work, come home kind of guy, he started, on the weekends, he started going through this collection of cookbooks that I had never really noticed that we had, these huge tomes. They were called Gourmet and they were gold lined and they had volumes, and he would just sit there for a few hours reading through the cookbook. And then he'd go to the store and come back and he'd start making all these. And so it took me a very, very long time to realize that so much of what I ended up was inspired by my father. He and I didn't have a great relationship, so I just never really put it together. But I watched him cook. He was the one who always took us to nice restaurants and taught us about. I'll never forget learning how to eat crab when I was a very young girl. And all five, there'd be 7 of us at the table and all the little kids, and we all have those plastic little bibs on. And my father was just obsessed about, have to learn how to get every single beautiful morsel out of those claws and what not to do and what to do. And so I grew up loving food, even though, and we did have a typical Jewish kind of upbringing in that. I mean, I grew up in Los Angeles and we were Reform Jews. So my father had grown up in a kosher home, but we didn't really keep any of those traditions so much. But when we were very young, we did celebrate the holidays. I grew up on borscht out of a jar and we had, packaged macaroons and my grandmother, though, on my mother's side did make, she would come visit us sometimes and always have a big thing of mushroom barley soup and some stewed prunes and apricots and with cinnamon stick in there. And it's an interesting thing. It was always in the background, but it wasn't something that really pulled me. I started baking bread a little bit for fun when I was 16 or 17. And I sort of was a hippie kid. So I was really starting to begin to explore all the ways I can be more natural and hands-on and do things. But there wasn't a lot of encouragement at home for that. So I kind of was still pursuing my music. And it really wasn't until my very late 20s that I sort of had to come to the conclusion that music was going to be too hard. I wasn't going to be able to figure out a way to make a living doing it. And then I was sort of in crisis. It was like, what now when you've had that dream, now what do I do? But in the back of my mind, when I was trying to figure it all out, cooking kept coming up. And I thought, but how would I go about it? How would I learn? I was really at the end of my 20s. And I thought, I'm too old. So I can't afford to go to school and work full time. And I just didn't really know what to do. And then I was living in San Francisco at the time, and someone told me about an apprenticeship program, which, it's so sad those don't exist anymore. And it was a kind of an incredible one because it had all kinds of areas that they covered. But there happened to be one for cooks. And it was the oldest hotel in San Francisco. I got so excited and I went on in the interview and I got the job. And at the time I was working as a waitress at a hotel downtown. I was just in heaven. I was so excited to be embarking on something new. And it only lasted about 3 months because unfortunately the chef got fired. He was really irresponsible and he was doing a lot of cocaine and mostly just trying to hire young women that he could. Oh, no. It was terrible.
I thought it was going to be more of a sob story than that. But
I know.
Too much cocaine.
Yeah, well, he was just he would just disappear all day with some young woman that he, it would always be a new one, and he'd leave the guys there to do all the work, and then he'd come back and yell at them they didn't do it right. And I was so disappointed, but I was able, because I had that little bit of experience, I went to the chef at the hotel I was working at, and I kind of pleaded my case and asked if there was any way he would consider training me in the kitchen, and he did. So that was kind of what I found all along, all these years, is that whenever I kind of put my foot forward, I'm trying to teach my son this. It's like sometimes you just think something seems impossible, but if you don't ever try, you just have to just move forward, and you may not get the thing that you thought you wanted, but something else is going to happen. Another door might open, but no doors will open if you don't try, if you don't just make an effort. And I felt like when things really just started happening for me in a positive way that made me feel like I was on the right path. Mm-hmm. That was a long-winded way of how I got into it, but that it's sort of back, through the back door.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't necessarily get into the food world on purpose, or a lot of us kind of stumble our way in or don't think of it as an option. Many people do know that is exactly what they want, but oftentimes it's in the back of our minds thinking of like what's comforting or what did we enjoy, but didn't know if you could make that into a career. So
a career, absolutely. I think part of the reason why I was able to continue going was I've always been very naive about money. Unfortunately, I've always kind of disavowed money. I still believe this. I think it's the evil of the world, and we're all sort of trapped. And I just think that we could just be so much more interesting humans if we weren't so enamored of this ridiculous thing that we all have to spend so much time chasing.
Yeah, we'd be a lot more interesting, I think, if we didn't have to make money.
If people had an opportunity to actually evolve as who they are, not what can I do to spend all this time earning a living. Yeah.
Yeah. And back to your story, I loved hearing about your music and your love of music, because I didn't know that about you. And I know that you have a concert series and you often have music as a part of your restaurant, Babette, which we'll chat about. But was that a natural progression of you kind of knowing when you wanted to do your own thing that it should involve music in some way?
Well, not necessarily. My husband and I, we've always worked together, and we actually make music together, that took a little longer to start doing. But we had a really great time during the pandemic because there was all this open. Once we felt like we were going to survive, we actually enjoyed the amount of free time we had. And he picked up his instrument, and I'm a singer and he plays guitar, and we actually worked on a lot of music together, and it was really satisfying. But I feel like the restaurant just takes up so much time. And when we got into Babette, we had no idea we started at the very first museum space, and we thought, it was a really sleepy space. It wasn't doing well at all, but we knew there was a lot of potential there. But once we opened, we had no idea. I mean, we were slammed from almost the first week. We had to scramble and hire, and we were doing 200 covers a day for lunch, pretty on the regular. So you have to kind of put everything else aside. I've really learned that lesson again and again, because I am a person who likes to do a variety of things. The music has really kind of disappeared from my life. But it's interesting because now that we have our own space and we kind of went after it with the idea of how can we not only enhance the experience that people are having, but how do we bring more people in maybe on a slow night? And I just happen to have a friend Irene Sazer, she's this incredibly talented violinist. Our kids went to school together, and I reached out to her and asked her if she might be interested in curating some kind of a series. We just started talking, and she came over and she played her violin out on the patio to see she was blown away by the acoustics. The whole space is just really quite magical out there. And we weren't really sure, but we thought we came up together with this idea that maybe we would because she said to get really high quality musicians to come once a week, that's going to be too hard. That's just too many. And so she said, what if we had one person a month and they had a different duet partner every weekend or every week? And I thought that was just such a cool idea. And she decided to try it herself first. And it was a huge success. It was in September. It was just really special. So, and it has made me, Berkeley side gave us a really great review about the music series, or a write-up about it. Musicians started coming out of the woodwork. Because everyone's looking for a place to, have a venue to play at. And since then, we found our second band we have a different band for both of our brunches. We actually have brunch Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and there's a different band each day.
Wow.
And one of the bands said, when are you going to get up and sing with us? And because they were playing, I was singing along to one of their songs that I recognized. And I thought, I kind of have always been a little bit, I don't know, embarrassed in a way. I feel like it might seem like overkill for the owner of the restaurant. Here, we've made your food. Here's our house. Okay, now we're going to come out and do a song for you. It just kind of felt like a little bit too much,
Okay.
But now I'm beginning to change my feeling about it. And I'm hoping, well, partly too, I was in the kitchen full time, and there was never a time it's taken us a very long time to find someone to work in the kitchen that we feel that we can trust. And we finally did find that person. So I'm now 3 days a week, 3 nights, I'm out on the floor as a host and greeting people. And so now I'm thinking, maybe I'll get up once in a while and do a song. We'll see.
Get best of both worlds there.
Yeah.
So still don't say goodbye to the dream of music.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think
I don't want to.
Yeah, and I think it's so nice. I remember goodness, it was some sort of symphony did music pairings to a recipe book a couple years ago. And I think I was helping them promote it as on social media or something. And I just thought it was such a cool idea because there's so many things that influence our eating habits and our eating patterns, and our enjoyment of food and music is such a big one. So to incorporate both of the things that you're passionate about, I think is very cool. And it's not something that you see as much. I know that it's hard to find music at a decent restaurant. Usually when there's music playing, my experience is that you just go for the drinks and maybe a snack, but to have it at a quality restaurant with quality music isn't as common. And I think it's a nice way to bring a community together and do something for the community by showcasing smaller acts or smaller but very talented people who are looking for a platform. So I think that's very cool. So I know that we jumped ahead to say let's talk about music in Babette, but why don't you tell me about Babette? How did it come to be? Was this always a dream? And tell me more about the restaurant itself. You're shaking your head. You're like, oh God, no.
Well, no, and it's just very funny how it came to be because the short version, I had a wholesale bakery in San Francisco for almost 8 or 9 years. I started in my flat in Noe Valley. I had it in my flat for almost 3 years before I had the courage to actually jump out into the real world. And
I am also in Noe Valley. So.
Oh, you are?
Yes. Yes, we are. So
I was at Noe and 24th Street for 18 years.
Okay. Wow. We're just on 26. So
wow.
Almost.
Yeah. Right next to Rabat going in towards Jersey.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I was really nervous about, I was just making enough money to pay my bills. So it took a long time for me to get the confidence to actually go out and get enough. So, but anyway, I did all that. And we had the business for a long time. I met my husband we were friends for 7 or 8 years before we actually got together. He ended up working for me for a little while and then going away and coming back. But we got caught up in that first .com disaster, the one that only lasted 6 months. Turned out that our lease was up and they tripled our rent. So we had to close. So he went to work as a private chef and I stayed at home. We got pregnant and I was able to stay home with my son for 2 years, which was wonderful. But after a while, it became really obvious that my husband's soul was getting sucked out of him. He hated working as a private chef. It was just really tough. The money was great. The benefits were great, but it was just no there. So after, it was like 8 or 10 years, we thought, I got to start looking for something. And we just actually, the whole thing started because one day I took our son to this game store on Telegraph in Oakland, And there was a beautiful space with a for rent sign. And I had not even been thinking of a business, but I looked in the window and I just all of a sudden got this crazy vision. And I just spontaneously picked up the phone and dialed the number on the window. And I didn't really expect anyone to answer the phone, but they did. And it was the landlady. And so I immediately just said, I'm thinking about, it was a general store / cafe / it was so overloaded. There was going to be like a little, takeout area with produce and flowers, plus local things made by local people. And then a little bakery and a cafe. And I had the whole. And she got super excited and she said, this is exactly what I want in this space. It all was just insane. I had to rush and start making a business plan. I hadn't planned on any of it. Anyway, long story short is that it did not happen, but it was going to be called Babette's Table. And the name came from, the film Babette's Feast, which is one of our favorites, but also because there's a place in San Francisco called Boulette's Larder. In the Embarcadero, not in the Embarcadero, but in what's that called down there, where the big farmers market is downtown.
Around the Ferry Building, I guess.
Building, thank you. And I don't know, I met them through some mutual friends and I was very impressed with their place, but the name just stuck in my head, Boulette's Larder. That's kind of a cool name. And it pushed me towards Babette's Table, because I had a picture of a giant communal table in the front with gorgeous flowers. And anyway, the whole thing did not happen. And it was an incredible learning experience. But soon after that, we got a phone call from a friend who said, I think that it was a coffee shop that we knew of that was for sale. And it was a place that we really, really liked. So we got super excited and called and the owner said, no, it's not this place. I actually have taken over the cafe at the Berkeley Art Museum about 6 months ago. And I can't handle it. I can't handle both businesses. So this one's for sale. And it was a really low buy-in. He just wanted out. And it was an opportunity to sort of jump into something without too much of a financial burden. And we just decided to do it. And that's how Babette was born. We were going to change the name after the first one, and we just couldn't think of anything that we liked better. So we just took off the table and called it Babette.
Right. And now it's in Berkeley.
Now it's in Berkeley. It's always been in Berkeley, actually. So we were with the museum at their original location. When we signed that contract, we knew they were planning to move to downtown Berkeley. So we did move with them. And it was a mixed bag there. There's some things about it that just are really, really great. At the new location, we started something called a Film to Table series where, because they have the PFA, the Pacific Film Archives, as part of that museum, they have fabulous foreign films. So once a month, we would pair a meal with a film, based on either the location or something that had something to do with the film.
Okay.
So they would come after the film and sit at a big table that sat 30 max and discuss the film and have these wonderful. That was really, really fun for us. Mm-hmm. We got to be more creative food wise, and people just felt so special. And it was a lovely, lovely thing. And I think, I don't know if my husband and I ever dreamed that we would ever have a full blown restaurant the way we do right now. We always kind of joked about never doing that. And here we are.
Yeah.
So, the pandemic happened and we had been wanting our own space, but I don't think we ever thought we would do something so large. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm 66 years old. My husband's 56. So it was a big, giant leap for us to do something so big at our age. But, you know, we also don't have a huge nest egg. So, you know, work is something we have to do, but we also, amazingly enough, still absolutely love what we do. And I'm
Right. And you still love
incredibly
each other.
thankful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm incredibly thankful for that. It's very, very hard. Physically, it's really challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And just on all fronts, it's challenging. It's just a lot of just so many details. But we have an incredible following of folks who've been following us from the original Babettes, and they're all so proud of them. Oh, we've been it from the very original one, and it's really lovely. And now we have a very vibrant brunch business. It's taken us a little while to build that up. My husband swore he'd never do brunch.
And since COVID, how has the restaurant industry changed that you've seen? Because you've been doing it pre and post COVID.
Right.
What have you noticed being some of the biggest changes? Is it people's willingness to spend? Is it people's willingness to tip? Are they coming out as often? What does it, after that, what was the biggest shift that you noticed?
I think, well, for one thing, people did not want to sit inside. Mm-hmm. That was a good thing about having the patio. And we made sure that we wouldn't move into any place that didn't have a patio. But we noticed that I think that people just don't go out as much as they used to. I think so many people have gotten so used to getting takeout.
Yeah.
This acceptance that eating out of a box is fine. I just think it's so sad.
Whenever we get takeout, I do put it on a plate.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. I know my son, it's like he doesn't even care if his food's hot. You know, he just grew up with this. It's just, it's just kind of sad. But I think that people are very, you know, part of it is that restaurants are fickle. You know, restaurant goers are fickle. They have a lot of choices. I think part of the thing with us is we do attract a bit of an older clientele, mostly at nighttime. I think we get more mixed for brunch. I think in general, people just don't go out and hang out as much as they used to. Mm-hmm. And I think we made a really, we thought about it long and hard, and we said, you know, when we were at the museum, we had the fast casual model. And my husband has always thought that that's eventually where everything's going to be. But we really didn't want to do that at Babette. We created this just beautiful space, and we said, I think that especially after all of this time, people should have some service, should have people talking to them, caring for them, instead of standing in a line, ordering something, taking your letter, going to, you know, even though people will bring you the food, it's just not the same. Mm-hmm. And I know that we've heard from a lot of our guests that they really, really do appreciate that. A lot of places are still using QR codes just because it was convenient to keep them in place. It took a lot of work to make all those changes. And I get it. I have the compassion for, you know, it's so many hoops to jump through. And so now it's over and now you have to jump through them again. Like a lot of people are just sticking with it.
Yeah, the QR code.
Sometimes when, you know, we feel like the payroll is not financially viable, you know, we go back and look at it again and we say, well, maybe we're being silly and maybe we should reconsider. But we always kind of talk ourselves out of it because we think that this model is really nice.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you go out, you want to feel like it's special. When we go out, it's special. We don't go out very often because I'm always making food at home. So we always have to eat leftovers. But when there's no leftovers and we go out, I know that at least my husband and I, it's like we want to be taken care of a little. We're going out because we want someone to take care of us because we don't feel like we can do it on our own. Yeah. And also with the QR codes, every time we see one, if we see they have paper menus, we'll ask for one because we try not to be on our phones at dinner.
Right.
So it's hard when you scan a QR code and everything's on the phone to really disconnect and just enjoy your eating experience. But that is one of my pet peeves since COVID of like, I don't want to be on my phone when I'm out because it's the one time during the day that I'm not. And I need that hour very, very badly. Yeah. So glad to hear that you have maintained and you understand the importance of having a place where people can truly enjoy their experience, where it's not just about the delicious food, it's about the ambiance, the music, the service, the everything. And I think that's missing in a lot of places.
We are so incredibly fortunate because we have, and I shouldn't single out my one server, but I have to because and we don't have very many servers. When we laid everybody off that last winter, it was just Karen and my husband and I and our son. We let go of like 5 other people. We don't have a large crew, but she literally ran that place by herself. And she's just an extraordinary person. She's of this industry. She's been in it a long, long time. And she loves it so much. You can tell. And she's just, as she says to me over and over again, she said, this is the place where I feel like I can be the most myself. Just truly love everything that you guys do and what your message is. And so it's not difficult for me to share that with the guests because I'm completely enamored of it. And it just completely blows my mind because she is so effusive and so generous. And I wish I could clone her. I mean, I joke with customers that if she ever leaves, I'm closing because she's a rare one, and our other staff members are wonderful too, but it really is something. And it makes me so happy because I can't be everywhere. And I'm really happy now that I have 3 nights a week where I can be on the floor so I can actually talk to customers because I see how that matters to people so much. Not everyone wants to talk to you, but I think a lot of people, when they make that connection that this is just, regular people just doing the work that they love and, and they acknowledge this shared thing that we all are craving. It's really, I have to say it has changed the way I see my business now that I'm out front a little bit. I'm so much happier. Because before it was just, sort of I'm not the drudgery, but it becomes that when you're working 12, 14 hours a day, every day, and it's just really, really hard. And you're working so hard to make all these beautiful things. But when you actually get to be in the beautiful space, like before we're in this hot kitchen, you get to walk out into this beautiful garden and go, oh yeah, I forgot we made this.
Yeah, you can see the fruits of your labor.
Gardening is one of my other loves. And I don't have time to do it at home at all anymore. So it makes me very happy to go outside and see this garden that we've created, walk around. People ask me questions about the plants and they want to know where we got this or how did we choose this color and when people, it just makes it all worthwhile. Like, oh, people are noticing details and that really just feels so good.
That's so nice. And of course they're enjoying the food, which is the most important part when it comes to a restaurant. And I'd love to chat about the food part of the restaurant. I know that there are a couple Jewish-ish dishes on the menu. There's a borscht and arugula you mentioned. I don't know if that's on the menu or if that's a special thing, but how are those significant to you? Why those 2 dishes? And tell me a little bit about how those got on the menus.
So when we were at the museum, it was more of a cafe lunch setting, right? So we had desserts displayed at the front counter when you walked up. And it was definitely a fast casual. You ordered at the counter, got your letter, but you would buy your dessert and take it with you to your table. And then somebody would bring the food. And it's always really fun to see everybody just, looking at the pastries. And it was really fun for me to make them. And the arugula, I wish I don't even remember where that original recipe came from. But I think the reason why I think it's so delicious, I've tried a lot of different fillings in it, but I hit on the one that I think just makes it so spectacular. Because I think the dough itself with the cream cheese dough makes it really nice, that nice tartness in the dough, and it makes it light. But it's all about the filling. I've had plenty of arugulas that were kind of dry, or you didn't really taste much of anything but the dough and maybe a little nuts or something. But so we make our own jams. I make an orange marmalade. And so I put orange marmalade down and then chopped chocolate and chopped walnuts. And I put more in than I should because it always overflows and gets all messy, and it crystallizes a little bit, but it just
the best part.
It's so good, right?
Yeah.
They are so delicious. And the reason I say that little cult following is that they weren't everybody's favorite, but there would always seem like, I remember there's this one young man. he never would give us warning when he was going to come. And it was never at the same time, but he would come and all of a sudden just wipe us out of all that we had just in one fell swoop. And I'm like, can we get a little heads up here? Do you want to order in advance or something? But that, and there's an older gentleman who's been a customer for a very long time. During the pandemic, we did do some home delivery food. Mm-hmm. And this guy, William Chanowski, he's a professor at UC Berkeley, just never would be happy if there was no arugula. Always the arugula. You have the arugula, right? You have the arugula. And they're just yummy. They really are. It's one of my favorite cookies of all the things that we make. And I wrote, I wish I had looked this up. Maybe I can send it to you because I just remembered it. During the pandemic, I started trying to write a little bit of a memoir / cookbook thing. Never really had done a lot of writing, but I wanted to just recall a lot of the crazy things that happened when I had the wholesale bakery in those days with a lot of fun stories. And I did write something about arugula, about my it's a Polish ancestry, and so am I partially, and this and that. I don't know. I'll see if I can find it. I don't know if you have an interest in it.
Was the arugula something you made with your wholesale bakery business as well, or was this new for Babette?
It was new for Babette. Yeah. And I think it came about when I think I sent you in a little thing that I had done a Jewish baking class. Because when my son was around 2, I started to get wanting to do something. And I started a baking class. There was a thing called the Berkeley Parents Network. It was a fantastic place to just advertise what you're doing. And people were really interested. And after the first class, somebody asked if I would ever consider doing a Jewish baking class. And I thought, I'm not really that equipped to do it. I didn't grow up making pastries, but I'm a good baker and I'm a quick study. So that's where I think the arugula came from. I am with plants. I often will plant things and then I forget what it was that I planted. I'm kind of the same thing with some of the recipes that I've over the years come around. I don't remember where that recipe came from, but I usually always take the original recipe and then tweak it some way to make it my own, like the jam that I used. And so we did that, and somebody wanted to make that classic chocolate matzo brittle. Yeah, with the caramel. And that was so much fun to learn. And that was probably everybody's favorite. So delicious.
So easy and so delicious.
So easy and so delicious, right?
Yeah,
and I'd never made Hamantaschen before, and that was fun, especially the ones I had growing up were really dry and boring. But if you put good fillings in things, that they're never going to be dry and boring.
I know most places do a disservice to Hamantaschen. I'm personally very passionate about them because they're one of my favorite cookies. But if you have one that's not dry and boring, it's the best.
I know.
It's so much fun. And so maybe they'll be on the menu in March. Who knows, for Purim?
Yeah, exactly.
Purim special. It got their holidays wrong, scarily enough. And what about the borscht? Is there anything with that with your background?
Not really. I mean, I grew up having only cold borscht. I'd never even tried hot borscht. And my mother, actually one of my favorite summer dinners that she made, because it was hot in LA, we would have cold borscht with sour cream, and she would make a platter of tuna fish and Kaiser rolls and sliced Swiss cheese. It was just sort of this smorgasbord of stuff. And I always liked it. And to be honest with you, I think I had borscht for the first time. So we do ours with smoked short ribs. Mm-hmm. I was told that tends to be more of a Ukrainian thing where they use, although I was reading about it again because someone told me that. And then I looked into it a little bit more deeply. And it actually said that Ukrainians tend to use pork more than beef. And beef comes, but I don't know. I really don't know. I am of Russian ancestry. There's a little bit of Polish on our side, but when I had the borscht with the short ribs, it just blew me away. And so I started just playing with recipes. It's a really simple thing to make. I like to put cabbage in mine. I put leeks. I like allspice, and I love sweet and sour. So the vinegar, a little bit of brown sugar, the earthiness of the beets, and then you get that unctuousness of the short rib. That's so good. And then we serve it with a horseradish creme fraiche and fresh dill. Yeah. And it's dinner.
Yeah. My grandmother is Ukrainian. At the time the borders were different, so I'm not 100% sure where it was, but we think it was Ukrainian. But they would make their borscht, if it wasn't vegetarian, because it was going to be served with dairy, it was made with beef always. But coming from a Jewish household, obviously, with like a hunk of beef that like stewing beef, or a beef that is still on a bone, like a short rib or something like that. So it was typically beef, similar to almost like a sweet and sour cabbage soup as well, which is frequently made with beef, but I'm not sure what the non-Jews of that area eat because I don't eat it. So I don't know, but that sounds delicious. I feel like that's always been one of my favorite soups. It just brings back memories of my grandmother, and I don't eat meat anymore, but she would never understand that. She would just like watch me pick out the beef chunks after when I was vegetarian. She'd be like, it's fine. But that was her. That's
at least you ate it, even if the beef had touched it. Some people
I still wanted her to love me.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't want to get disowned from my grandmother. I knew
that makes sense.
There was always a line when I became vegetarian. If it was at grandma's house, I was vegan on and off, but when you go to grandma's house, she doesn't get it. And if I didn't bring it myself, I wouldn't eat chicken. But if she cooked something with schmaltz, I'm like, what am I going to do? Not eat my grandma's food? She'll kill me. It'll kill her. So I always ate what she made.
I think that's super reasonable. And it's just kind of sad when people go to such an extreme that they're going to jeopardize relationships.
No, I wanted to keep my grandmother alive. And
totally.
As long as I could. Because I knew that if I didn't eat her food, she would blame her death on me.
Oh my goodness.
But I think that's just the Jewish grandmother thing to do.
I sometimes think about how when I didn't know the grandparents on my father's side very well because they were living on the East Coast. So we didn't see them very often. I don't know if she was a big cook. I don't think so. I remember she made lemon meringue pie for some reason. My father would always talk about her lemon meringue pie, but I wish I had been a little bit closer with my grandmother before she had died. She wasn't an easy person. And she was the one, though, that she did a lot of cooking, and she would bring us things, or when we were there, we certainly celebrated the holidays with them. But I was quite young when she passed. Mm-hmm. And my mother didn't really carry on the traditions. My mother just wasn't that into cooking. So, but I love to make my grandmother's mushroom barley soup. That was one of my favorite things that she made. And she would use dried shiitake mushrooms in hers, which I found really interesting because that's so not traditional, I'm sure.
No, but that's shocking that she could access them easily enough, but also...
that she thought to.
Yeah, that she thought to, because I feel like that's out of the box for that generation.
Exactly. And I have, I don't know if it was from that I adopted this really quick way of making a really tasty mushroom stock by using the dried shiitakes. Mm-hmm. They just impart such a deep mushroom flavor really quickly. So it was like, oh, that's really clever. But anyway, I love that. And so I think like my whole connection, I'm not a religious person, although, to this day, we light the candles at Hanukkah and we say the prayers. And sometimes I feel a little hypocritical about it because I don't really believe so much. But I do feel that cultural thing. There's that absolute traditional pull that is there that means something to me. Mm-hmm. And it's actually really cute because when I lit the candles with my family growing up, we all just, it was the same thing all the time, monotone kind of reciting. And for some reason, it's just myself and my husband and our son, but we started singing songs to do it. And he's 22 now and he still wants to do it. We don't do it every night now. He will if he's around, but it's kind of lovely that he and my husband are both into it. They like the tradition of it. We like to make latkes. I some years made donuts. That's not something I ever had growing up. But in doing research and seeing that was a very traditional thing. And of course, who doesn't like donuts? Actually, I don't like donuts that much.
So I will actually say I don't like donuts because I grew up with homemade ones. And so I was spoiled because we'd only eat donuts for Hanukkah and my mom would make soup ganyot. And that was the only time of year I'd get a donut. So if I go to a donut shop, I'm not interested. But if you give me a hot one that's going to burn the insides of my body, then I love it. So so you're right. Who doesn't love donuts? But I only like homemade donuts fresh out of the oil, which are harder to find. So
yes, absolutely.
But they are delicious on their own.
Yes.
But if you're spoiled, then
once you're spoiled, you're just spoiled.
You can't
There's
go back.
no going
Honestly,
back.
I think it's honestly a blessing in disguise. Sometimes when I'm growing up with a mom who cooked all the time, I got picky. I became not a picky, but a choosy eater. I'll eat everything.
Yeah.
But like if it's, I don't know, a specific thing like a donut, I'm like, my idea of the perfect donut is different than a Krispy Kreme or Bob's donut or something like that. So choosy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, our son was we went out to restaurants quite a bit when he was little because my husband was private chef. We had the income.
Mm-hmm.
And because we cooked all day, we just, didn't really want to make dinner that often. Well, we did, but we probably went out once a week. And he would get so mad at us because we were always so judgy, constantly analyzing and nitpicking. And he was like, can't we just sit here and eat and enjoy it? And you guys are terrible. But he's totally the same now.
Yeah.
Because once you know, and you don't want to eat things that aren't delicious.
It's
if
true.
You don't have to.
Especially when you're paying for it. I always say, like, if I'm going to a restaurant, I want to eat something, I wouldn't necessarily make it home.
Absolutely.
But if I'm going to a friend's house and they pour me a bowl of cereal, I'm so grateful because it's two separate, it's apples and oranges. So if I'm out to eat as an occasion, it has to be great.
Exactly. So, so many people say, oh, we'd love to have you over, but we're too intimidated. I'm like, we're not. It kind of makes us sad because we're like, please invite us. We would love to come.
I know. We're currently vying for anyone to have us for Thanksgiving because usually I host, but I'm currently 34 weeks pregnant and I don't want to host Thanksgiving this year. I'm not interested in doing that. So we're like, which of our friends are in town?
Well,
parents are hosting. So we understand that. Yeah.
I get it. Well, you probably want to be with people that you know and love, but Babette is hosting Thanksgiving not to the public necessarily. This will be our second year where some very, very dear friends, she's Belgian Iranian, he's Israeli Moroccan. They have hosted Thanksgiving for the last 20 years. It's always a huge crowd. But last year they were remodeling one part of their house. So they asked if maybe we could co-host at Babette.
Cool.
And we did it. It was super fun. And now they're remodeling their kitchen. So we're doing it again. And you're most welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to look into that because
I'm serious.
Someone met, I had a friend text me today to say, hey, are you doing Thanksgiving this year? And I was like, I'm going to be 37 weeks pregnant. Absolutely not.
Wow.
So I'm not doing it. No, thank you. So I might hit you up on.
Absolutely. You're most welcome. A lot of really nice people.
I'm becoming larger and less useful as every day goes by. So
is this your first?
It's my first. Yeah.
Oh, how exciting.
Yeah. Exciting. And scary.
I can still remember it.
I'm ready for the end.
I'm sure you are.
Yeah. If you meet me in person, you'll see that I'm 5'1" and a tiny human. So having 25 to 30% of my body weight added on to me over the past 7-8 months has been
pretty wild.
So wild.
Yeah.
Because I'm already small and I feel like I'm just going to fall over.
Have you had a pretty good pregnancy so far?
Yeah, it's been fine. Like I haven't been nauseous. I haven't had cravings. Everything's been fine. I've been healthy. Wow. I've just been uncomfortable, which is fair. And then of course, this is not a part of the podcast, but just last week I had put my glasses for some reason on the floor because I think I was hugging my dog on the floor and I put my glasses down and I forgot and I stood up and I couldn't see my feet and I just stepped on them because I couldn't see. I have to go to the optometrist because it was hard to get. I couldn't fix it myself, and I was getting emotional about it. So I was like, "This is the end. I have to be done soon." I felt so stupid, and I went in and explained like I broke my glasses because I couldn't see them when I was walking.
Right.
And
It's one of those rare times.
Yeah. And I honestly told them mostly because I was like, God, are they going to charge me like $50 to fix my glasses? But then they didn't charge me anything because they felt bad for me.
Oh, great.
So that was nice. So
that is nice.
Anyways,
those are nice glasses.
Yeah, thank you. I just got them back yesterday. I've been rocking a pair with a 2-year-old prescription. So while I was waiting for them, but it's been so nice to chat with you and get to know you. And I've not yet been to Babette because I don't go to the East Bay very often, especially now I can barely hold my bladder to get across the hallway.
Yeah.
I have to time my trips across the bridge, quite
Absolutely.
honestly.
No, I know.
But I can't wait. I can't wait to come and try the rugula and experience the music and or brunch. And it's always nice to speak to business owners and Jewish business owners and people who are doing something just a little bit different, because I think in the restaurant, as patrons, you don't necessarily know what goes on behind the scenes in the restaurant.
Right.
And it's often glorified and it looks sexy and everyone's, I don't know, it's very much a glorified thing when we see it from the outside looking in. So to hear about the ins and outs of what actually goes on and the challenges that there are between staffing and pandemics and everything in between, it's and important that people know.
I'm so glad I only have one child that's actually biological, because I feel like almost most of my staff are my extended children, because we do employ a lot of young people. Like right now, besides Karen, the person I mentioned, everyone else is totally new to the restaurant business. So we're about to have our first meeting teaching everyone how to carry plates. Like,
yeah,
this is wild, and how to talk and how to be. And it's interesting. We've had a couple pros that didn't end up. We actually got rid of one recently that we just weren't too happy with. And now we're kind of at that beginning stage again with people. And it's just a never ending cycle, meeting, new people, wondering if they'll stick around. You put all this energy into people and then they're gone. You start over again.
And I think for young people, I waited tables to pay for culinary school. So I waited tables pretty much full time during the week, and then worked on or during the night in the nights. And I worked as a temp during the day so I could go to culinary school. And I think it was so helpful for me to learn how to talk to people and how to carry a conversation and how to react and how to just communicate. I think it was one of the best things that I did, one of the biggest learning experiences for me, because you deal with all sorts of people. You're dealing with coworkers, you're dealing with your managers and bosses. And I think for young people, it's such a great job because you build a community, because you're really a little family at work.
Yep.
And then you also have to deal with a lot of happy and unhappy people.
Right.
Who are customers.
And I think, we all joke that every person should have to do some form of customer service in their life, because we all, have experiences with one another, and a lot of people don't act well and don't know how to don't know what to say or how to be. And it's tough. And you're right. And I tell some of the young ones too, it's like, this is the best job you'll ever have, because you get fed. You've got a community of peers.
You go home and you don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Although, I remember all the years I waited tables, all we ever talked about was work and customers. And
you complain.
It's kind of entertaining in a way.
Oh, absolutely. But then it's like, you can also laugh about it.
Yeah. You're not talking about it in a serious way, the way my husband and I do. We can't not talk about it.
Then they leave. Then the customers leave. Everyone has to go home at some point when you're on the service side. But I think it's one of the best jobs for young people, really.
Absolutely.
That and like a mall job, like working at the mall in retail. And just like, the amount of pants I folded at Gap was astounding. It taught me a lot of patience.
It's a lot more boring though at a mall.
Yeah. It's a lot more.
Actually, the only retail job I ever had in my life was when I was very, very pregnant. I was working as a pastry chef in a restaurant, and there was a Chinese restaurant right next door. And the smell that was coming from there made me so sick. It wasn't our restaurant. It was their stock or something with and actually every time I smelled demi beef stock of any kind, I just was, I finally had to just quit. And I got a job at a local, it's probably not there anymore, on 24th Street. It's called Joshua Simon. Is it still there? No. Yeah, it was a really great little store. And yeah, that was the only time. And I was massive.
Sounds terrible.
Fun times. Yeah.
Sounds terrible, but yeah, wow. Well, this has been so nice. Next time you're in the city, please let me know, and we can grab a drink in the new year or a coffee.
Yeah, I love that. I don't get over there nearly as much as I'd like to.
Not Your Bubby's Nosh is a part of the Jewfolk Podcast Network and is produced by Jewfolk-ing. For more shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast. If you've got questions, email me at Micah@noshwithmicah.com.